Opening words comes after announcements, when one thinks by definition the very first thing that you say out here is opening words. So let's just say that I'll say good morning again later. Are there any announcements? Nothing's happened this week? Okay. Then let us have our morning call to worship. Service with the lighting of the chalice. find the words in the bulletin. As the kindling of the chalice calls us to community,
let there be light.
As the flame of this chalice reminds us of our values,
Let there be light.
as the glow of this chalice encourages us to hope,
Let there be light.
let there be light.
Opening song is number 159 in the Gray Hymnal.
The words of affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow together
With the divine.
thus we covenant with one another.
And with our God.
Now a moment of special music.
From sea to shining
invited up to share our joys and sorrows.
Organ is possessed.
Is that a joy or a sorrow?
This is a candle of relief. My wife on Monday, I know, I'm not trying to embarrass you. No, I got a call. My wife leaves about 20 minutes before I do, and I got a call about 10 minutes after she left saying, I hit a deer. And the car's gonna be laid up a bit, but Dawn's okay, and that's the important part. Cars can be fixed a lot easier than people, so this is a candle of relief.
This is a candle of two joys. Marty and I welcomed twins born to our grandson Ben and his wife Stacy. They were born about 4 weeks early, but Wesley Ronald came in at 6 pounds, 6.5 pounds, and Eloise Marcy came in at 5 pounds, 15 ounces. Both mom and babies doing well. Babies will have to stay a little longer for development of their lungs, but we are over the moon with thrills.
This candle is for people struggling with addiction. May they find peace and their demons leave them.
This is a combination, joy and a concern. I hit a bump in the road with my health and working on it. Spent quite a long period in the hospital, and the doctors took their time scratching their head, and I think we've figured out what's going on. And in the midst of it, I begged and pleaded to be released for the weekend that I had planned to go to Houston to see my granddaughter Audrey, who has come back from a terrible period of mental strain, and she is working full-time, works with autistic children. We had a wonderful weekend, and that was my joy.
This is a candle of light to keep us moving one step at a time in the right direction. The man that we were caring for, he passed, and it was a beautiful passage after a lifetime of debacle with his children and disillusion. The few times he came to meetings, he did learn how to say, I'm sorry, I love you, forgive me. And I just leave it back to you.
This is a concern for Susan Knight of Barneveld Congregation. I don't know if you are aware, but she apparently has been developing dementia for some time, and she is now in the Masonic Assisted Living in Utica. And Barb Phillips told me last night that they are putting a guest book that you could write emails to her. And I think it's due today, November 9th. If you want, you could
contacted Barb Phillips to send a message to Susan, so we keep her in our thoughts and prayers.
This week, Rosanna and I, and probably more people here, I'm not sure, attended a very large funeral for Ed Rose, who was a judge, and we knew his family, we know his daughter Chicky really well, and his wife Gail, and anyway, so just in memorial for him. He was a Republican and a Catholic and a conservative, and I don't think that there was a thing about him that he and I would have agreed on, except we enjoyed the debate and the conversation. And I think that that's what, that's a promise of America that I think that we all can celebrate. And he'll be missed. And finally, we light a candle for the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken and are kept in your heart. Let us now present the offering for the work. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a prayer and meditation? No? Okay. Let us present the offering for the work of, continuing work of this congregation. It has become tradition within this congregation on the Sunday before Veterans Day to ask anyone who is a veteran of any branch of service to stand and to be acknowledged. Quite a number. I know that it's said, and it sounds trivial, that people keep saying this, but thank you for your service. And thank you for the service of anyone here who has served in any capacity, keeping the public safe. Our next hymn is
69.
In a week that has seen the election of Zoran Mamdani as the mayor of the greatest city in our state and land, old vague prejudices about who is or who can be an American and who is not and who never can be rose again to the surface of our cultural landscape. The suppositions that Americanism or Americanness and whiteness, that Christianity and citizenship, that ancestry and allegiance were all cut of the same cloth, were whispered by many of those who were upset by the election of a Muslim immigrant as the mayor of Gotham, and shouted into microphones by those who have no fear of being called out as bigots. Whispered or shouted, the message was the same. This is our land, and they have no business here. On a continent already inhabited when Europeans began planting flags and crosses, declaring all before them as theirs or their kings, this argument over Mamdani and who is and who is not rightfully here can be said to have been set into motion 5 centuries before the people of the 5 boroughs cast their votes in November 2025. To those who dispute the right of a Ugandan-born son of Indian immigrants to be equally American, the argument comes down to blood and soil versus the idea of this being a nation not based on the commonality of ancestry, but rather on the common denominator of an idea. That being that all people, having been created equally, are equally entitled to the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness available in this country we set out to create in 1776. America, it is often said, is not only an idea, but a country unique in the 18th century certainly, in its being founded upon an idea, rather than the theretofore reasons countries and nations came into existence, that is, by tribalist notions of blood or gods, or by conquest by peoples whose tribe or gods led them to conquer. In 2025, it's again important to not succumb to the revisionist history of today's America First tribalists, who'd rather have us believe that American incarnation was the embodiment of an Anglo-Protestant manifest destiny, which imagines, or reimagines, the American story as one directed by divine will, leading Europeans, specifically Protestant Northern Europeans, who came to be known as WASPs, or White Anglo-Saxon Protestants, from the Pilgrims on down, to create the New Jerusalem in the New World. Anyone who believes that fairy tale, origin story, should fail intro to American history, from which they should have learned that America, since well before it was named after an Italian mapmaker who never actually visited the continents now bearing his name, has been the repository of much more human and natural complexity than the once upon a time the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock story could account for. Evolution, not creation, just like in the natural world, is the process by which the idea of America came into being in 1776, some 284 years after another Italian, Christopher Columbus, at the behest of their Catholic Majesties, the King and Queen of Spain, discovered the New World, and some 776 years after other Europeans discovered it first in the Viking explorations of what is now Canada. By 1776, some intellectual Americans imagined a new nation of disparate peoples scattered across the Atlantic seaboard in 13 separate colonies, arising in an act of, in the words of Tom Paine, a new creation. Paine's big idea was of a nation founded upon reason and natural rights that would break from the superstition-bound past from which they or their ancestors had come. We would begin the world over again. Political liberty would replace blind loyalty to people who fancifully imagined that gods had placed crowns upon their heads. Religious liberty would then free us from those gods, or at least their churches too. We would become a land where reason animated inquiry rather than one where fear snuffed it out. Morality would be based upon our common understanding of our universal humanity, which would, eventually anyway, create equality beneath the rule of rational law. Yet, even this narrative of evolution, from exploration and colonization to revolution, is far too simplistic to capture the complexity of the idea of America, then emerging in the salons of Boston and Philadelphia and Williamsburg. We know now that some 15,000 years ago or so, some would say, some evidence indicates 20 to 25,000 years, before the Vikings arrived in Long Meadows, the ancestors of people that would come to be called Native Americans, or First Nations, which I find more accurate, began their arrival in the Americas from the West, or the Far East, depending upon how you're looking at the round globe. These people built their own national identities, told their own creation stories, created their own ways of government, learning, identity, and interaction with the natural world. They invented their own gods and moral codes and rules by which they would interact with the other peoples whom they would encounter through the years. Some of the societies of the First Nations would be as rationally based as the one Paine and others had hoped to build in their new United States. Others would be mirror images of the superstition-bound Europeans whose lands never seemed to have recovered in the centuries of the Enlightenment from the Dark Ages. Most, like most people today, were probably blends of reason and rumor, superstition and science, which, like the new, undocumented, I might add, immigrants to their land from Europe, forced them to reimagine their place in the ever-changing world around them. It seems easier for people to believe that gods bring forth nations than to accept that their national identities are the byproducts of active imaginations. We dream or frighten ourselves into existence. Who we are, to our very core identities, as Jews, as Catholics, as Protestants, as Unitarians, as Muslims, as Hindus, as pagans, or whatever have you, as well as Americans, Italians, Polish, Russians, Ukrainians, Zimbabweans, Australians, Chinese, and native or immigrant to any land, is who we imagine ourselves to be. Nationalists spend every waking, though clearly not woke, minute warring like Don Quixote against windmills they think to be dragons. Whether they believe themselves on quests from their gods or as crusaders for their blood and soil, guarding walls against alien invaders, they all are on errands of fools. Billions of years of human evolution, billions of years since the universal code of life was created in the Big Bang and the explosions of thousands of stars, prove foolish any and all attempts to substantiate notions of anybody's, let alone any tribes, peoples, or nations' uniqueness. None of us are special. None of us are unique. And though we try and try again to create around us a patina of uniqueness based upon our own skin color and relationships with our gods and our national identity, like all patinas, these are but the semblances of substance, just skin deep and porous. In the end, in the absence of substance and solidity, we have no choice but to admit that we are essentially alike everyone else on this our common planet home, which Carl Sagan described as a lonely speck in the great developing cosmic dark. Biologically, our humanity, like every other living thing on Earth, is the product of evolution by means of natural selection. But being a conscious, self-absorbed, some might say naturally narcissistic, wandering and questioning species, has brought forth a nearly co-equal mimetic evolution to the ideas which seems even more real to most of us than the physical reality in which we live, and which is more often than not out of our control. Yet, it is as inescapable as death that our biological reality is true, no matter if we believe it so, and our memes are often believed to be true only because we believe them to be so. As far back as the 1940s, when questions of race, racial superiority, inferior races, race mixing, and racial purity were all the rage, from Nazi Germany to South Africa to the segregated South of the United States, on to Asia, where racist ideations were just as prevalent, especially in Imperial Japan, which had its own notion of just who comprised the master race. Objective scientific consensus, as exemplified by meetings of the American Anthropological Association and the American Association of Biological Anthropologists, began to shift with the growing evidence that race itself was more meme and myth than biological reality. The Human Genome Project of the 1990s put what should have been the last nail in the coffin of racial identity by clearly demonstrating that all human beings, sharing 99.9% of our common DNA, are not rationally reducible to races. Skin color, eye shape, etc., are tiny fractional subsets of that 0.1% of the DNA that's not universally shared by all. For those folks who are at the moment spearheading a moral panic about gender, they too should know that sexual variation also takes place within the very narrow confines of that same 0.1%. As the unanimously adopted 2019 statement of the American Association of Biological Anthropology put it, humans share the vast majority, again, 99.9%, of our DNA in common. Individuals nevertheless exhibit substantial genetic and phenotypic variability, genome-environment interactions, local and regional biological changes through time, and genetic exchange among populations have produced the biological diversity we see in humans today. Notably, variants are not distributed across our species in a manner that maps clearly onto socially recognized racial groups. No group of people is or ever has been biologically homogeneous or pure. Take blue eyes, for example. How many people are blue-eyed here? There we go. Oh, good number of you. Okay, take blue eyes, for example. A University of Copenhagen study published and peer-reviewed just a few years ago indicates strong evidence that although the genetic variations for blue eyes probably emerged for at least 40,000 years, their variation in the genome allowing for the replication, which occurs only in 1 or 2 genes out of 20 or 25,000, occurred for the first time somewhere near the Black Sea around 10,000 years ago, and possibly as recently as 6,000 years. Hans Eibert, Associate Professor of Cellular and Molecular Medicine from the University of Copenhagen, wrote, "From this we can conclude that all blue-eyed individuals are linked to the same common ancestor. They all have inherited the same switch at exactly the same place, the OCA2 gene, in their DNA. While environmental and cultural factors have played a role, both outside and underappreciated, in the prevalence of this or that eye color, skin color, or even body type, in the 30,000 years or so that our species has become the dominant one on the planet, what we see is a tale of rapid evolutionary change, but certainly too rapid for the creation of separate races, out of our common humanity. Jews with blue eyes, and so-called Aryans with blue eyes, Norwegians with blue eyes, and Afghans with blue eyes, Palestinians with blue eyes, and the British monarchs with blue eyes all share a common and recent ancestor. Blue eyes alone demonstrate the opposite of what the Nazis tried to prove. The commonality, that is the commonality of all people as members of a singular race. Through the light-sensitive lens of the bluest eyes shines this singular truth. All people are created equal. Over these last 30,000 years, were created every tribe, culture, settlement, and city, every modern language, every contemporary religion and god. We've invented agriculture and the technology to both enhance our ability to feed our growing populations and to conversely free ourselves from the burdens of farming by requiring fewer and fewer of us to actually work in fields. In these 3,000 decades, over the course of 10 and 12,000 human generations, we've come up with many ways to govern our swelling populations, most of which, the vast majority of which, have been what Democrats, that is small d Democrats, would call despotic. Along with gods, we invented monarchies and priests to bless them. After so many generations, with examples of kings exercising divine rights as natural throughout the world, what can only be described as a truly natural miracle occurred: the idea that government is made legitimate by the consent of the governed. The idea that is the presupposition of America, the idea of we the people. Yet, the relative youth and some historians and political scientists would argue inexperience of the democratic ideal versus the millennia upon millennia of strongmen and their gods continues to make us more vulnerable to losing our democracy, and perhaps all democracies, now in the 250th year of its existence. If you were to condense these past 30,000 years of civilization, and civilization building and falling and building and falling, into a 24-hour day, these past 30,000 years would comprise all of about 6 minutes before midnight. Perhaps the French philosopher of enlightenment and revolution, Denis Diderot, was right when he wrote, "Humanity will never be free until the last king is strangled with the entrails of the last priest." There certainly seems to be a will, buried deep in the human psyche, for order and security, no matter how illusory these things may actually be. Fears of losing our security easily brings to the surface of is easily brought to the surface of creatures who imagine themselves lions, even when acting much more like scared field mice. And just as easily is turned on anyone of our kind in our midst who deviates from the norms of any given society, who makes them seem like a threat, when in fact these differences can be explained by the smallest changes in 1 or 2 genes, which have been turned on or off by environments acting for adaptation upon a relatively small number of generations of a creature which 7 million years ago shared a common ancestor with at least 4 other kinds of great apes. The common ancestor of all blue-eyed people lived somewhere between 200 and 500 generations ago, too far back to be included in photos and family scrapbooks, but not so long ago that we wouldn't recognize the commonality of membership in the human family if we were to encounter them. At the founding of the American Republic, when all men were proclaimed to self-evidently be created equal, approximately 20% of the population of these nascent United States were, in fact, enslaved, and widely thought by the majority to be less than human. What we would now call genocide was underway against the first people of this continent, who came to be called Indians, First Nations, or Native Americans. Women were definitely not included in the supposedly universal designation men and the all men are created equal ideal. Men, it would seem, was more of a moniker than a name for human in Jefferson's time. Although LGBTQ+ folk have been a part of humankind since before we emerged from Ape Adam and Ape Eve, evidenced by variation in sexual and gender orientations in every species of living thing on the planet, even in nations birthed from the Enlightenment, did nonsensical prejudices found in divergent words of God linger on to pollute revolutionary new ideas of our common humanity and universal right to liberty. Depending upon calculations, there have only been 9 to 12 generations since a combatant fired the shot heard round the world to manifest in blood the American idea. 9 to 12 generations can be included in the portrait galleries of family scrapbooks and on library walls. 9 to 12 generations comprise the collective iconography of our nation, from town squares to the sides of mighty mountains. But, once again, the illusion of granite, marble, and mountain walls hides the persistent truth of the shallowness and thus the essential weakness of these icons. Like countless icons, statues, idols, and even rulers before them, all can be toppled in an instant. Overnight, the whole east wing of the White House was demolished without a thought of the people whose people's house it was said to be. The people's house emanated power that most ancient castles have only in fairy tales, because of the people, as in we the people of the United States of America. So who are we? Who are we the people of the United States? It took thousands of years for the people now called English to become English, Scottish to become Scottish, German to become German, Japanese to become Japanese, Chinese to become Chinese. A close look at the history of any and all societies quickly erodes any notion that nation and race are synonymous or even real. Some countries, like Iraq or Namibia, are the creative byproducts of mapmakers and colonial offices, usually far distant from the countries that they created. They are such recently made countries that the ink of their borders is hardly dry enough to write myths of their origin stories. Others are so relatively old enough to allow those myths to be retold as fact over and over again, over time to be wholly believed. Thus, English nationalist hooligans waving their flags of St. George can denounce immigrant scum while forgetting that the hunter-gatherers who were but ancestors of Homo sapiens, arriving on what would become the British Isles about 800,000 years ago, followed by Heidelbergensis and Neanderthals, and wandering Homo sapiens who first arrived about 40,000 years ago, thousands of years before notions like nation or race were introduced into the mimetic fever dream of purity. Over the next 4,000 centuries were to come peoples from all over the continental landmass we've come to be called Europe. And eventually, so too would come the peoples of the once conquered and colonized lands, from the Americas and Africa, the Middle East and Asia. For the English nationalist, buried deep in the fairy tales of ancient Englishmen, who they assumed looked just like themselves, with a monarchy that can trace itself back at least as far as when the Romans left Britannia, who is and who is not, who can and who can never be British, let alone English, seems clear. But it's rooted in the same lies, albeit they better told, as we now hear coming out of the mouths of blood-and-soil tribalists in America. Our counter-argument itself and the ideal of its founding, of we the people, cannot be limited by skin color or national ethnic origin or any myth of race. Once we understand the science of human origins and our shared 99.9% DNA, nor can it be based upon religion. Once we understand that the gods, too, all have their creation stories, with gods and lands written into one another's fairy tales, so that most gods and goddesses of humankind now reside in museums and ruins and the forgotten places once held as sacred. As lands and peoples transformed into new identities by conquest or immigration, so too did their gods, like those identities, convert or disappear altogether lost in the mists of time. The American idea is that of a people bound together by a common love of liberty. No God in established churches or religions. No kings with divine rights superior to those of we the people. No limits on who can come to these states in order to cultivate the fruits of that liberty for themselves and their posterity. It is this idea for which we honor those who sacrificed years of their lives, if not their lives utterly and completely, to keep it alive for now and forever on this Veterans Day. It is this ideal which proclaims that Zoran Mandani is as much an American as George Washington was. It is this idea which is expressed in the words of the Statue of Liberty, called the Mother of Exiles, welcoming the huddled masses yearning to breathe free, who sailed into New York Harbor, knowing that they and their descendants would be American. It is this ideal that urges onward through jungles and deserts, through bandits and marauders, by land, by air, and by sea, across rivers, including the Rio Grande, people carrying their meager belongings and precious children to seek refuge in becoming American. E pluribus unum, one out of many, a melting pot, a mosaic, a nation of nations, a people of peoples, exemplified by the soldiers of the 442nd Regimental Combat Unit, the most decorated unit of the Second World War, composed entirely of Japanese Americans who fought and died for the same United States that put their families into racist internment camps, and that tried to exclude them from being American. And in the Code Talkers, who confounded the enemy Imperial Japanese in the same war, even if, as Indians, they had been confined to reservations, while their Americanness, as ironic as that might seem, was also denied. And to the Black Americans, who were the millions, from the Harlem Hellfighters of the First World War to the Montford Point Rangers of the Second World War, fought in segregated units for a segregated America in the name of liberty for all. It should be remembered that the very first American killed in action in the Boston Massacre in 1770, in what was to become the American Revolution, Crispus Attucks, was a black man, the son of a slave, who also had First Nation ancestors. African Americans and Native Americans have fought and died in every war America has had. The idea of America, the ideal of America, the promise of America is not embodied in mad pretender kings who wield wrecking balls like scepters to demonstrate their power over the people and our history, but is exercised by each of us whenever we extend our hand to the tired and the poor, those huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Anthropology teaches us that our nation of immigrants is just one part of a world of immigrants. After acknowledging the truth of this, let us become the most welcoming part of the ever-changing, ever-moving world, building our new nation, our new people, our world over again upon this idea: we the people is all of us seeking liberty together. A closing song?
121.
The words for the extinguishing of the chalice are found in your bulletin. The flame is gone from sight, yet it still burns within.
When shadows grow long, may we light a flame, rather than curse the darkness, becoming bearers of comfort, of kindness, of hope.